All right, welcome back. We have a very special episode for you today. So, as you could tell, the right torsion spring of this two-door garage is broken right there, but the left-hand one is still intact. So, today we're going to replace these two torsion springs so that way we can open the garage door. So, as a supplemental note, let's just go over real quick how it works. So, on top there, you have an axle in essence. And you have two springs that puts a lot of torque on the actual axle, and that force is then transferred to the left and to the right onto two wheels that act as pulleys. And these wheels right here carry a cable all the way down to the bottom of the garage door assembly. So logically, let's say if the door assembly is, let's say, 500 pounds, right? So you would have torsional force of 200 pounds, 250, 250 on each side that will assist in maintaining a net zero weight. And so that way, when you use a small motor, it could just carry the capacity. You're not carrying any weight in essence. You're just transferring the load up and down. So that's how it works. And the reason that won't open right now is because it's not balanced. There's too much weight on the door and not enough counterweight to bring it back up. Before we get started, it's best you have all the equipment prepared. And what you're going to need is you're going to need these torsion rods. So these come with the package. I'll put it in the description later. These are 1/2-inch rods and probably 18 inches long. And you stick it in these holes right here as a lever, all right? Because there's still a lot of tension on this left-hand side, so we have to relieve the tension before we could open this thing up. And how we do that is we're also going to need some crescent wrenches, and channel locks are very good. And because the other side has already snapped open, we don't have to worry about that. So there are two square pegs that hold this thing together. All right, so you just got to be very, very careful. So, let's see here. All right, just gonna want to go up once I release it. So just put a little bit of stress on it. Downward stress. Oh, no, it's wanting to go down. Okay. Stress on it. And I am wearing earplugs, so the sound might be a little weird. Just in the unlikely event if things should snap, I won't go deaf. All right, I'm feeling the pressure now. It's trying to press down. There. Just let it do its thing slowly. Try to count the loops so I can remember what to do later. That was a quarter. This is half. Three-quarter. One. Just do quarters. So this is the 5th quarter. 5, 6, 7, pretty relaxed now. So six, almost no tension on it now. So 27, let's remember that number. Okay, again, the socket size for me is 9/16. And there's a car in the way. Move the camera so that way you get a better view. And I'm just going to use the crescent wrench on one end to keep it in place. And an impact wrench on the other to drive it out. Now, just as a safety precaution, I've disengaged the trolley from the motor. So in the event, unlikely event that someone does pull it, nothing will happen. Not that anything would anyway. So there, the nuts and the bolts are out. And now when you take it out, they'll just rest on the axle. I believe the axle is a 3/4 inch, like EMT or something, but maybe a thicker gauge. And also it's 16 feet in length, and can't really find that at the hardware store easily. So now, tree hanging. Huh. This one doesn't have a grommet. I wonder if that had anything to do with the braking. Alright, so that spring still has the square bolts attached, so that's why you see it doesn't move. We're going to have to dislodge that. And now what happens is we need to be careful now, because we'll have to take the wheels. I think we just do on one side, but we got to take it out, and we have to thread the cable very carefully so that way it'll fall back into place. Otherwise, if it's not balanced and you try to lift it, it's going to be cockeyed, and you don't want that either. You don't want 600 pounds of doors, all jacked up. So there's really no explanation necessary. This is just like the very first step that we embarked on, except there's no tension involved. So again, a wrench, lefty loosey. Quick freestyle recap. As you can see, the springs have been released from tension and moved the edge of this axle. And what we're going to do next is we're going to take the same square screws that's on the hub, on that pulley thing, and we're going to open that up, release it on this end, release it on that end, and so that way we can move the axle off from the base, the actual bearing that's inside on that sheet metal. So these right here, these are our replacement parts, and they're quite nice. I was surprised they even gave us these new 1/2 inch torque bars. I'm very thoughtful, and also these cotton gloves Very nice. I'll put a link to the description in the description later. So this is what they look like. They've already got the square securing bolts in there, so we don't need to save the old ones. Just a quick commentary correction. These spring diameter are actually 1/4 of an inch, 0.25 inches. So that's why there's that designation on there. And I think this is 32 inches long and probably 2 inches in the ring diameter. So, yeah, corrected. All right, note amendment number 2. So, as you notice on here, there's like a right designation and a left designation. But these things are wound in a clockwise fashion, and according to the instructions right here, and also comparing against the existing setup, it looks like the right spring is typically installed on the left-hand side when you're facing the back of the garage. So it's a little confusing, but I suppose, you know, it is what it is. So it's something to pay attention to. Read the instructions. Okay, I'm only gonna do this once because it's a huge pain in the ass to do it twice. So what I've done is I've taken the cable drum and I've dislodged both sides, so that way we can move it. And I'm gonna show you how it's done on one side. So what happens is there's a lot of weight pulling on it. It doesn't like that. So let's seat the springs in that central pivot point there, so we could alleviate some of the weight. You notice it's kind of arched. What we want to do is rest it right there, so that way it's easier to work. so prior to the water break, we reset the springs back onto the torsional axle. And by the way, I don't know what they're called, but I just call it an axle because it acts like an axle. All right, so now for the second part. Now that everything's set, we need to reestablish the drum, the cable drum. Make sure to weave it from the bottom of the door up to the top. Make sure there are no obstructions. One trick of the trade is to keep the axle steady. So use a vice grip and to just gently clasp it so that way it won't turn. Right? So as we put tension on this thing, I don't want to turn. I want to keep it from doing that. And also there's a certain way, there's like a clamp. You recess into, and there are rails in here. I'm going to try and wedge it into the guide rail so that way it will flow properly. All right, so that's where we want. That's a good amount of tension. So if there's no slack, and to keep it from letting loose, we will go back. So now the drums have been secured. You can kind of see it on that side. And secured. It hasn't been tightened yet. It's just kind of held in place. It's snug, but it's not tight. So what we're going to do now is we're going to connect springs using the bolts that we retrieved earlier. All right. So now it's just a matter of creating tension on this rod. We're ready to go, rock and roll. But before doing so, remember that the drums are still kind of loose. So we need to tighten that first before we tension the beam. So let's do that. All right, final phase. The cable drums are secured. Now it's just a matter of tightening it. So in the last go around, I believe we had 27, was it? 27 revolutions for the tension. So let's start with that. Start with 27 and make sure they're balanced. So if we do 27 on this side, make sure to do 27 on the other side. All right. So So the force was pushing down. We're trying to put this in. So let's go ahead and bring it back up. All right. Oh my God. 25. That was pretty intense. These are shorter and thinner gauge, so I think 25 will be a good starting point. We'll then adjust it as needed. Because if it's too much, you can tell by the way the door is going to lift. If it's too much, it'll go up too fast. And if it's too little, it'll go up too slow. So that's most of the structural components. Remember to take the holder off the vice grip, so it doesn't affect the integrity of the system. All right, before we start using the motor, because it's disengaged, let's try and lift the door. That's a good test. If we can lift the door with our hands, that's a good indication that it's probably good. All right, so I'm trying to lift it and it's still quite heavy. So I think we need to give it more attention. It's still too heavy.